History's shifted right under our noses. They've won without a single conflict. Let's break it down.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett at the airport, going to head to D.C. Hey, saw where President Trump was putting pressure on Cuba by shutting down Venezuelan oil. Now what he's done is, it's really a masterful move. He's cutting off oil. You know, China was there. There was no mistaking that timing. They're clearly going to make a move on Taiwan, and they need that oil. Russia needs that oil. And Trump took it over and seized it, and I guess embargoed it, I guess is what they say. But something else that he did was he stopped Cuba from getting it. Now Cuba, of course, 90 miles off the coast of Miami, communist-owned run, used to cost Russia $1 million a day to keep them afloat, alive, and now, of course, they're bogged down in Ukraine. But by Trump seizing that oil and stopping the flow to Venezuela for the first time, realistically, in my life, we have a chance of making a change in Cuba. The Castros are murdering thugs, Fidel and his brother now, and whoever else, and it's just got to end at some point. When I was younger, I thought all our blustering talk was, we're gonna end Cuba, in the communist reign there, and it never happened. But this is a clear and decent shot we have. If anybody can pull it off, it's Trump. He understands. The most powerful thing we have is our military. But the second most is our economic power. And that's what Trump's going to use. And he'll do it without firing a shot. So I support this move. I hope we can end the communist reign on Cuba. Those people have been imprisoned. And, you know, that's why they're always trying to escape, get to Miami. And some of the most loyal, patriotic Americans we have are Cuban Americans, because they get it. Anyway, we'll watch what happens this week. Thank you all for seeing me here.
While the mainstream media was busy setting up cameras at the airport, the real game was already over. The board had been rearranged. President Trump pulled the trigger on something they're calling Operation Midnight Hammer. And, yeah, it sounds intense, because it is. This was a strategic seizure of Venezuelan oil infrastructure. Don't think for a second this was just some economic move. This was a decisive, crippling blow right to the jaw of those hostile alliances operating in our own backyard. By snatching control of those assets, the U.S. didn't just send a memo. We physically cut off the heavily subsidized crude supplies that have been propping up these two-bit communist regimes for years. It's a return to actual strength, using raw American power to totally reshape the landscape without needing to deploy a single soldier. Let's be brutally honest about the communist regime in Cuba. For decades, they haven't survived because they're self-sufficient. They survived because they're leeches, relying on sugar daddies abroad. First it was the Soviet Union, then it was Venezuela feeding them. That steady IV drip of subsidized oil, that was the regime's oxygen. You take that away, and the whole rusty machine starts to lock up. The implications of Trump's move here are absolutely massive for Havana. We're sitting here watching the potential dismantlement of a hostile system that's camped out just 90 miles from the Florida coast. And look how it happened, not with kinetic force, but with crushing economic leverage. The pressure cooking down there right now is immense, and it is undeniable. You catch Representative Tim Burchett standing in that quiet airport concourse, and you realize he knows exactly how heavy this moment is. He didn't mince words addressing the American people. You could hear the realization in his tone. He called President Trump's action what it is, a masterful geopolitical move. And Burchett hammered home the crucial point here, the one that matters to you and your kids. He pointed out that this strategy could lead to the total failure of the Cuban Communist government without us ever needing to put U.S. boots on the ground. He highlighted just how effective it is to use our economic might as the ultimate weapon to hit our security goals, praising the strategy for its bloodless efficiency. Do not for 1 second think the timing of Operation Midnight Hammer is a coincidence. It's not. This move exploits a massive critical window in global affairs right now. Look at the board. Russia is totally tapped out, heavily extended in their mess in Ukraine. They don't have the bandwidth to come bail out their old Caribbean buddy. At the same time, China is obsessed with their ambitions across the Taiwan Strait. The traditional backers who usually prop up the Cuban regime are completely distracted. That leaves Havana isolated, exposed, and incredibly vulnerable to American economic pressure. This is how you play the game. It's a calculated capitalization on global chaos to lock down our interests in the Western Hemisphere, striking while the opposing forces are looking the other way. The reaction among patriotic Americans out there? It's been fast and it's been loud. Many of you see this as the ultimate proof that the peace through strength doctrine isn't just a slogan, it works. The comments flooding social media right now reflect the real desire out there to finally see communism dismantled, but without the tragedy of sending our kids into armed conflict. They view this as an absolute masterclass in statecraft, finally achieving what decades of weak policies failed to do. It feels like a historic turning point down in Latin America, a massive shift away from those dug-in communist systems toward a new reality dictated solely by American resolve. The sentiment is crystal clear. This is how you win. Understand what you are watching here. This is modern warfare, but it's being executed on an economic battlefield. Grabbing those Venezuelan assets wasn't just some transaction. It was a strategic checkmate. By severing that economic lifeline straight into Cuba, the United States has potentially just initiated the final, ugly chapter for the hemisphere's oldest communist regime. It is a raw demonstration of power that speaks way louder than any diplomat's words, achieving total victory without spilling a drop of American blood. Welcome to the new era of geopolitical dominance, where smart strategy replaces brute force. Ending.
This report is complete, but the fight is just beginning. Subscribe now to stand with us.